Hello, hello. This is the My Artifact episode number 3820. Today's date is January 15, 2026. It's been almost like a afternoon at 1:57 p.m. All right, let's just jump into the question. Let's go. All right, the question is, what if superpower required sacrifices? Oh, that's a really good question. All right, first of all, what exactly is this question and why am I asking this question to myself? This is what if question. Why am I asking this question to myself? What if question has always been really interested way to give the answer. It kind of like forced me to think about that reality. When I try to think about that reality or when I try to create that reality inside of my mind, I'm kind of like utilizing my knowledge, information and experience that I've been through. And somehow it kind of like felt good. Disclaimer: the information that I'm trying to tell you is not exactly right or it's not exactly wrong either. It's raw, it's unfiltered, it's just my opinion. So do not believe in any kind of like information that I am saying or do not seek for any kind of like information that I am saying. It's just my opinion and opinion are subjective. Now regarding about the question says that what if superpower required sacrifices? First of all, does superpower really require a sacrifice? Well, I think yes. In friction world, yes. In reality, yes too. Okay, yeah. But for this particular question, you need to understand the consequences. Understand it's not really that ki basically just like that ki you can able to fly and then after that for a week you might not able to walk because of you just fly. It's not really that. Okay, yeah. When you try to become something bigger, superpower means I'm not kind of like considering as superpower means like that you can able to fly or you can able to shoot laser from your eyes and things like that. No, I'm thinking from a kind of like a something action that kind of like a do something very different than another. And when you try to do something different than another or unique than another, then that required that kind of like some work really required kind of like a some sort of sacrifice. Okay, yeah. And that sacrifice is very much essential in every possible scenario. I'm trying to explain as simple as possible as it can. Okay, yeah. In real world we do not have superpower. No, we cannot. We cannot able to fly, we cannot able to shoot the laser and things and that and that. And I will not going to talk about the superpower and things like that. But still is this thing that we are kind of like doing something so crazy today that it kind of like feel like magical. Example is this thing that we can able to fly. Yeah, literally we can able to fly by aeroplane. We have drones, we have kind of like a hoverboard, we have kind of like a lot of stuff that being able to be fly is not a kind of like a somebody imagination. But 200 year ago this is kind of like a imagination. Like we just can't even imagine that how do we supposed to fly and things like that. Now we can able to be fly. There are so many stuff is actually happen in the real world which kind of like feels like magical. Like the mobile phone that I'm holding, the mobile phone that you are holding, look at this mobile phone of such a machine that you have that you can talk with someone else. You can look at the world from this phone. You can access the internet. You can do anything on this phone. And why is that? Why is that thing? It's like, have you ever imagined 200 year ago a kind of like somebody you can showcase like that? A Graham Bell is kind of like invented the telephone, and at that time telephone was kind of like a somebody 10 feet huge thing machine. Okay, yeah. But if you showcase this, sir, this is the kind of like a somebody phone that I have, which is kind of like a so tiny and so things, and not only it can communicate, it can do so many things. Like I can take a photo, I can take a kind of like listen to music, I can scroll internet and things like that. And Graham Bell would kind of like somebody just bust it out like, what the fuck is this thing, dude? Okay, yeah. Like for the Graham Bell, it kind of like a feel like magical that what exactly is this device? And this is kind of like something so crazy and stuff like that. So basically is this thing na ki in visual point of perspective we don't really understand that how much kind of like a something um, magical thing that we did, because in day-to-day life we are kind of like a see things very everyday kind of like a stuff. A mobile phone that you have, you are not really excited about this thing. The car that you have, the building that you are seeing, the aeroplane that you are seeing is a kind of like a feel like everyday stuff. But when you think about that ki like a almost like a 200 year ago or maybe 100 year ago, these are kind of like a not even possible. But is it possible today? Not even possible. It's kind of like simply way much cheaper, accessible for everyone and things like that. I call this superpower. Like, I don't know how do I supposed to explain this thing, but I always admire regarding about the human technology and human innovation, what they've been through and things and that and that. And I think that now a superpower, a kind of like a simply you can able to be fly and you can able to shoot the laser and things like that. It might not gonna add anything in kind of like a stuff. It kind of like a look really kind of like a simply cinematic and kind of like a simply feels really admirable to kind of like a look at the Superman who's kind of like a flying and things like that. But the real superpower that we have, the humans we have, and it's like really crazy. And yes, it does really require sacrifices. Now, if you don't really understand the sacrifice means what, then you have to understand a couple of things first. Example. Now, I wanted to dance. I cannot able to dance. How do I supposed to dance better? Practice? Yeah, very easy question, like a very easy answer. Like if you wanted to learn dancing, you have to do a practice, right? Now, basically, I did practice. So I spent kind of like a lot of time and things and that and that. Then I could able to dance, right? Yeah. So I'm gonna ask this question again. What did you sacrifice for this dance? I didn't really any sacrifice anything at all. Well, probably is this thing that you think that now you don't really sacrifice anything at all, right? Okay, let's just understand the couple of things first. Okay, yeah. Now, basically, is this thing when we try to kind of like a do anything, we kind of like a invest time into that thing. Okay, yeah. So imagine is this thing that if I kind of like assembly, it took me 2 weeks to kind of like learn the dancing and things and that and that. So what did I sacrifice? I sacrificed my time. Okay, yeah, time is also things that you sacrifice. Okay, you kind of like invested and things like that. Okay, yeah. Probably sacrifice is a kind of like a simply word which is very emotional. Usually people represent that word only for kind of like a death and things like that. But in kind of like a simply visual point of perspective or kind of like a simply technical point of perspective, you have to understand that key sometimes you are not kind of like a sacrificing someone's lives and things like that. Sometimes you kind of like a sacrifice your time. Now, basically, is this thing, if you are a kind of like a such a person who is kind of like spending time on scrolling reels or kind of like a watching movies or things, or you are not kind of like utilizing your time for like a nothing really at all. Okay, yeah. So for you, you don't really feel that ki it's a, yeah, like I spent 2 weeks for kind of like a learning a dance, so it's really good na. So how does kind of like my time is kind of like a sacrifice? No, my time are utilized for productivity, right? So it's not really sacrifice. Yeah, that is really good thing. That is really good thing. So for you, that time is not considered as a sacrifice. It's considered as a productive. All right. Yeah. Now I'm gonna do the same scenario with Elon Musk. Now Elon Musk is one of the richest person in the planet. Okay. Yeah. And his time is very valuable. Very valuable. So if I'm gonna say Elon Musk, sir, could you kind of like a dance with me? Could you do practice? You have to spend at least like a 2 weeks. Okay. So for him, if he spend 2 weeks for dancing, then probably he's sacrificing his 2 weeks of time, and his time is really worth of everything. So do you understand this thing? So basically for some person, time would be kind of like a considered as a just a normal thing, but for other person, time would be considered as a kind of like some asset, and asset, or they wanted to kind of like utilize that asset for very very essential purposes. Okay, like dancing is not a kind of like a somewhat something really essential. Dancing is just a kind of like a some activity that I mentioned. But what I'm trying to understand is this thing that key whatever the time that he invests, that time should supposed to be kind of like a something matter to them or not, or things like that. Whatever I'm trying to tell you is this thing that he sacrificed a time. Okay, he sacrificed 2 weeks of time to learn dance and things like that. That's why he could able to be dance and things like that. All right. Now, for this particular scenario, this you might not resonate with this particular scenario. Okay, why is that? Because time is a kind of like a thing that he probably everyone thinks that time is just time. Yeah, like basically just yeah, like basically what I do, it already kind of like a spending some amount of time. So how should I supposed to sacrifice time and things like that? Okay, yeah. Now I'm gonna kind of like change the scenario a little bit further. Okay, example, you just kind of like somebody doing a dance. Okay, you kind of like spend 2 weeks for dancing. You dance. Okay, yeah. Now because of you dance really good. Okay, you dance really good. It's not like that, you dance really good. Now because of you dance really good, someone kind of like told you that you dance really good and you have to kind of like simply pursue your career in a dance. Now because of that, someone kind of like tell you, you are kind of like bitterly inspired because you don't know that you can able to be dance, that you should supposed to be consider that it's kind of like considered as a career and things like that. But that another person kind of like tell you this thing that it is a kind of like my career, that dance would be my career, because like basically is this thing till now I'm kind of like a dancing, but right now I'm kind of like seeing as a dancing as a career. Okay, yeah. So right now I'm thinking that yes, I would supposed to be do dance. Then another person says this thing that you should supposed to be kind of like go to the dance school or things like that. Okay, yeah. So you are convinced. Okay, yeah. So you are signed up for this dance school. Okay, you are signed up for the dance school, and that dance school is kind of like a year. Like basically that dance school kind of like takes a year and things like that. Now you spend entire year to learn a dance and things like that. Okay, yeah. You dance really good, really great and things and that, which is like really amazing. Okay, yeah. Now what exactly happened? Okay, yeah. That after you kind of like you do a dance, you went to the dance school, you kind of like spend almost like a year over there and things and that. Okay, yeah. Now what exactly happened? That suddenly is this thing that because of you are kind of like spending time on dance and things like that, your grades get lower. Okay, like your education thing, you might not get that much kind of like a score, or you might not get that much kind of like assembly. Like in the school you are have kind of like a little less attention and things like that, and because of this thing you are not really get that much score. Okay, you might get kind of like a D minus or things like that. Now what is exactly the sacrifice? Like basically is this thing, you are kind of like a very sharp person, you every day you kind of like get A grade kind of like things like that, A grade or A plus grade or things like that. But because of this dance and things like that, you get kind of like a minus D grade. Now if you get that minus D grade, then probably now this scenario is kind of like a somewhat something matter. Now because of you get minus D grade, you are not able to kind of like go into the college, or you are not allowed to go into the college and things like that. So you are kind of like go into the kind of like a local college and things and that. Okay, yeah. Now because of the dance, you kind of like get D minus score, and because of the D minus score, you cannot able to go into the college. You went to kind of like a local college and things like that. Okay, yeah. And in the local college, you didn't really, yeah. So in this particular scenario, for this dance, what did you sacrifice? You not only sacrifice your time, you actually sacrifice the time, but you actually sacrifice your intention. Okay, yeah. Like basically this thing, dancing was not a kind of like some career that you wanted to be pursue, but someone kind of like told you that you could be able to dance and things like that. That's why you went there. You can do a dance and things like that, but still you don't really get a job as a kind of like a dancing and things and that. Okay, yeah, but you spend almost like a year to learn dance and things like that. So you sacrifice your time. Okay, yeah. You are also sacrifice your kind of like a simply energy. Okay, yeah. Like basically if you didn't really spend your time on dancing and learning and things like that, if you kind of like spend those time on kind of like a learning things or kind of like a simply your schooling grades or things and that, then probably is this thing that you might kind of like a really good grades and things like that, so that you could able to go into the really good college and things like that. But because of it didn't really happen, because of your kind of like spend so much amount of time in kind of like dancing and things like that, so you actually sacrifice time, your energy. Okay, yeah. Now this is the two thing. This third thing is that key expectation. Okay, expectation was that key, because of you are kind of like doing a dance for almost like a year. Okay, so you are kind of like expecting thing. What exactly that you are kind of like expecting that a kind of like a somewhat somewhere you might get a job or in a dancing skill, or maybe you might kind of like a somebody went into the kind of like a somebody dancing and things and that. I don't know, but a kind of like a somebody kind of like a some sort of money that you should supposed to be earned from the dance and things like that, from the dancing school, but you don't really get it. So expectation didn't really meet. Okay, the expectation didn't really meet. So like basically is this thing na ki you not only sacrifice your time, you sacrifice your energy, you are kind of like a sacrifice your expectation, you are kind of like a somebody is this thing that ki also you don't really get a kind of like a somebody your grades too, you also kind of like a sacrifice your grades, and also you sacrifice that college that you wanted to go on, things and that. So let me tell you one thing, that ki every action that you do, okay, yeah, it really required kind of like a some sort of sacrifices. That sacrifices that we don't really understand if that time is kind of like a very small. Like basically for a 2 weeks of dancing practice, you don't really matter that much. But when you spend almost like a year, then you realize that, oh my god, I kind of like sacrifice my time, not only my energy, everything, and I didn't really get anything at all. So this is what kind of like sacrifice it. Okay, yeah. So this is what kind of like sacrifice is. Okay, now let me tell you one thing. Dancing is a really good thing. It's not really bad. It's a really good thing. And also is this thing na ki there is no kind of like a certain amount of time that you could achieve and things like that. Like basically life does not work like time. Like let me tell you one thing. Like basically my father or my parents actually told me that ki after you done your college, you can get a job, and after you get a job, life would be really easy and things and that. I always think like that ki, oh yeah, I just have to kind of like do my schooling, do my college, and do my kind of like a graduation, and then I kind of like get things and that. But it does not happen. No, life is always been kind of like something level 1 and level 2 and level 3 and level 4 and level 5. It never really get kind of like somebody that ki a silence that you could kind of like see and kind of like somebody the relax and things like that. No, it's not. You always been hustling and things like that. It never stop. Nothing really at all. So basically is this thing, then what exactly is this thing? Then why are we kind of like sacrificing is this thing? Is it worth it? It is worth it. But you have to understand the scenario, understand the situation. Yes, you might not get a job in dancing, maybe kind of like after a year and things like that. But probably is this thing because of your kind of like a spend time over there, because of you kind of like a dance and things like that, because you kind of like a spend kind of like a some amount of time and things like that. Someday or somewhere, maybe some sort of connection, maybe people kind of like realize that you could kind of like do a dance, and then there is a kind of like opportunity will definitely gonna come. Okay, yeah, definitely gonna come, because whatever the time that you're gonna spend on learn anything, it will kind of like add value somewhere. You just have to be a patience somewhere. One thing. Another thing is that what kind of like stuff that you get. Okay, yeah, I'm gonna talk about that. What kind of like a stuff that you get. Now, basically, you actually sacrifice everything. You actually sacrifice your grades and things and that. But what stuff that you get, you have to understand that thing. First thing that you get is that you connect. You kind of like build the network, or you kind of like build the connection. Okay, means like that. Because of your kind of like spend almost like a year in dancing and things like that, you might have some sort of friend who are associated with the dance people. Okay, yeah. And obviously they will have always gonna need regarding about dancer partner and things and that. They will gonna call you somewhere, and they will kind of like tell you that ki, dude, there is a kind of like a dance opportunity, would you come and things like that. One thing, you build the connection. Another thing is that because of your kind of like a dancing and things like that, your health is became really good. Because of that, before, you are not a kind of like a really particular person kind of like a do spend that much amount of kind of like a activity and kind of like a things and that. But because of the dancing is a kind of like a part of exercise. Okay, that part of exercise is kind of like a somebody solve lot of kind of like a problems inside of your body. Okay, yeah, like because of you move, because of you kind of like a taking sweats and things and that, you kind of like that exercise is kind of like add value. Okay, yeah, like it kind of like it does, yeah. Exercise, like a dance is a kind of like some sort of amount of exercise which kind of like a somewhat something add value in your health. Okay, third thing is that the way that your body move, you cannot able to move that body before. Dancing is a kind of like a some skill that you can move the body in a such a way that a regular part of the body cannot able to do this thing. Like, have you seen the dancing people who kind of like dance in such a way that kind of like somebody the normal people cannot able to dance? Because when the people who dance, they kind of like move the body in such a way, they move their kind of like some body parts in such a way that kind of like some normal people can able to do this thing. Now you can able to do that thing, which is good thing, which is good thing too. Okay, yeah. Now another thing is that you are also happy too, because of dancing is a kind of like a thing that you are kind of like a get really happy. It's not a kind of like a thing that someone kind of like a force you to do dance, because dancing is a kind of like a thing that a kind of like a art or kind of like such an art form that it depends on expression and things like that. If you're not enjoy the dancing process, then you might not gonna do a dance how much the other person kind of like a force you and things like that. But dance is a kind of like a thing that it kind of like a express you happiness and things like that, and you will kind of like a get that happiness, you will kind of like a feel really good and things and that. There are so many kind of like a things that you will gonna get, and there are so many things that you will gonna sacrifice in this and that. So let me tell you one thing now. Every power or every superpower is kind of like a wants some sort of sacrifice, but it kind of like a gives you some sort of amount of knowledge, informations and things and that. Now every activity that you do is not kind of like a somebody just waste of time. It's a kind of like a somebody is this thing that key, it adds something you don't know. That example is this thing that key, you are kind of like something but you are kind of like such a person who kind of like spends so much amount of time on playing video games. Now from societal point of perspective, playing video game considered as a kind of like a waste of time. But no, when you play the video game, when you spend so much amount of time in video game, you kind of like simply solve, you kind of like understand regarding about game mechanics, you kind of like understand regarding about solving the puzzle and things like that. If you play God of War, in the God of War there are so many puzzles that you have to solve that really require kind of like somebody else kind of like intelligence and things like that. You build that intelligence while playing this game and things like that. You understand the game mechanics, you understand kind of like a character movement, you understand the kind of like a things that how is kind of like a puzzle should supposed to follow, you understand that how should you supposed to defeat the boss fight and things like that. These are kind of like some stuff that you learn. Like basically every action that you do is not a kind of like a waste of time, it's kind of like something add something value, you don't know that. Okay, yeah, but it depends on that key, the if society kind of like somebody accept this thing or not. Like basically is this thing, if you know the kind of like a things that key, how do you supposed to fight with that boss fight and things and that, but how much it kind of like add value in you, like a basically in financial point of perspective. Because yes, people judge by the money, and yes, money is matter too. Okay, because the money kind of like a solve almost like a 90% of the problem. So definitely success is somewhat something equal to money too. So this is what it is. Okay, I didn't really create this definition, but this is what kind of like assembly society creates the definition, and you and me are also bounded towards that thing too. So yeah, so every stuff that you do, it kind of like adds something, and kind of like a something adds something, or kind of like a something add something value in you, or kind of like a something that can sacrifice something value in you too. Yeah. So the question is that does superpower kind of like a somebody require sacrifices? Not only superpower, but yeah, power is also kind of like a sacrifice too. Now considering superpower can sacrifice something, yes. Now if I kind of like understand regarding about superpower, then it went to the kind of like a something the frictionalized world and things like that. Like Superman is actually born with a power, so it does not really sacrifice anything at all. Batman is sacrifice something, like basically Batman is a superpower, but he doesn't really have any superpower, but he kind of like built that technology and things and that. So he sacrificed his intelligence, time, and things like that. That's why he became a superhero and things like that. A Flash is kind of like a sacrifice pain, because when he get the lightning, he kind of like get that energy so that he could able to run that faster and things like that. But it's kind of like a frictionless world and things like that. Whatever. But in reality, every power really required a kind of like a sacrifice. That is true. Now this is it. I should supposed to end here. Thank you.